Hello everyone and welcome back to another Star Wars figure review. Today we're going to take a look at some more figures from Rogue One, a Star Wars story. And in today's review we're going to take a look at the rebel hero and main character from Rogue One, a Star Wars story. And that is of course none other than this one. This is Sergeant Jyn Erso, this time around depicted in her outfit from the planet Jedha. Now, from trailers and footage that we've seen from Rogue One so far, this does appear to be the costume that she wears throughout the majority of the film. You may remember I gave you a look at Jyn Erso in her outfit from the planet Edu in a previous review, and that should pop up on screen somewhere for you to check out if you haven't done so already. But this is, again, the hero costume in many ways. It seems to be the outfit that she wears throughout most of the film, and we actually have a couple of figures to look at in this particular guise. There is of course the Black Series 6-inch figure to give you a look at soon, so I'll be giving you a look at that figure in a future review. This of course comes to us from the 3 3/4 inch line, and it's a bit of a mixed bag if I'm being honest. I really can't make up my mind about this figure, whether I love it, hate it, or just sort of like it. It's a real weird one, and I'll elaborate more on that throughout this review. But before we do that, as always, let's take a look at the packaging that she comes in. Once again, standard Rogue One packaging design for this figure. We have the Death Trooper featured prominently at the top of the card, as well as the Rogue One logo just off to the side. Down below that, some very cool imagery of Jyn Erso in action. And then on the front of the card, or at the front of the bubble, we have an image there of the play feature that's included. On the back of the box, we have an advertisement for the Studio FX app, which you can download from the App Store or Google Play. And above that, a brief description of the character. So enough about the packaging, let's take a look at the figure itself. Now, as I said, I do sit on the fence with this one a little bit. It's a bit of a mixed bag in the sense that, objectively, there's nothing really wrong with the figure. It has its flaws, but it does its job. It brings us a faithful representation of the character seen on screen. Although from a subjective point of view, there's just something about it that doesn't quite click with me. It's very bland, very boring, a little bit too plain, and I'm not quite sure why that is. I think the majority of the issue for me personally lies within the pose. As you can see, she's very straight cut, very vanilla in many ways. She doesn't really bring a whole lot of action to an action figure in the sense that she's just sort of stood at attention. And I think that a figure such as this needs to be in a much more dynamic pose. Obviously, from the artwork that we've seen on the front of the card, and also from some of the footage that we've seen of Jyn in action in the film, she's running around, she's shooting stormtroopers, she's doing all sorts of crazy, weird stuff in the film. And I think the pose of this figure should have reflected that a little bit more. If you take, for example, Kylo Ren from Wave 1 of the Rogue One line, he's in a much more dynamic pose where, even so much as one foot stepped in front of the other and a different hand gesture just really spices up the look and feel of the figure. And I think this is something that this figure could have benefited from. And in that respect, I feel that the 6-inch version is far superior to this one, just because, you've got added articulation and much more in the way of posability and all that sort of stuff. So this figure does fall a little bit short in that respect, but as I said, objectively, there's nothing really wrong with it. The sculpt, the paint applications, even the accessories are decent, and in that sense, it's a recommended figure for the most part. If you're looking for a Jyn Erso figure from the 3 3/4 inch line to add to your Rogue One collection, and you want sort of the main outfit that she wears in the film, obviously this is the one to get, and at the moment it's the cheapest one as well. I do believe that this figure will be repacked later on down the line with the interactive AT-ACT vehicle, which is set for release in December, although that retails for around $269.99, which, if you want that just to pick up a Jyn Erso figure, it's questionable at best. So this is obviously the way to go. Now, in terms of articulation, this figure is your standard 5-point of articulation figure, so in that respect she features a ball joint at the head, swivels at the shoulders and swivels at the hips. Obviously the headscarf restricts a little bit of posability in the head, although thankfully that is removable, which gives you a much better look at the head sculpt underneath. Now, the head sculpt itself is decent. It's not, groundbreaking, or, it's not lifelike by any means. and I think the paint applications certainly don't help in that respect. But it's decent, you know, it's a reasonably faithful likeness to Felicity Jones, who is the actress who plays her in the film, and, you know, I'll let it slide. It's not awful, but it's just not fantastic. It's just sort of in the middle. It's okay, decent. So, no major issues there. As you can see, there's some great sculpted detail on the outfit itself. You've got all that detail there on the jacket, which continues around the back of the figure, where you've got this really cool padded, almost quilted design going on. She does feature a holster attached to the belt, which can store the blaster pistol that's included. This is the same blaster pistol that was included with Jyn Erso in her Edu outfit from Wave 1. So obviously that can be removed, placed into the holster like so. And the second accessory that she comes with, or third if you count the headscarf, is this shoulder mounted cannon, which isn't fantastic if I'm being quite honest. As you can see, straight off the bat it has real trouble balancing on the shoulder itself, and I just don't think this is a very practical weapon. Figures such as Chirrut Imwe come with fantastic accessories that are stylized versions of what we see in the film, whereas with this one I think it's just a play feature gone too far. You know, there's no way in hell that a character of Jyn's stature would be able to carry around a cannon like this. You know, it's huge, it's impractical, it's not something that you'd carry around on a battlefield, and in many ways I feel as though this grip or handle would have been much better utilised as a tripod or a stand, where you could have sort of had this as a mobile cannon rather than something that, you know, is carried around on the shoulder. One of my other main issues with this one as well is the fact that when the headscarf is attached to the figure, the cannon doesn't really sit that well on the shoulder. It just kind of tips off to the side, and again, balance is an issue here as well. The cannon always tips over, and obviously being quite heavy, it weighs the figure down quite a bit, so it's impossible to get her to stand up with this thing on the shoulder. So not the best creation by Hasbro. This is definitely more along the lines of the Build-A-Weapon line than it is these new features that we're seeing with the Rogue One figures, so in that respect I'll leave that to the side. But the rest of the figure is, as I said, decent. It's not fantastic, it's not awful, but it's just not for me. Personally, I much preferred the Wave 1 figure, which depicted Jyn, as I mentioned, in her Edu outfit. But this is decent, and again, if you're wanting just to add a Jyn Erso figure to your collection and you're not really particularly picky about which one you pick up, then it's a decent selection. And if you want to pick this one up for yourself, as always, there is a link down below in the video description where you can pre-order this one with staractionfigures.co.uk. So thank you for watching this, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this review, and I'll be back with many more very, very soon. Got some fantastic Rogue One figures to give you a look at, so make sure you stay tuned for those. And until next time, as always, keep collecting, and may the Force be with you.